Good evening. RENEWS English section is on air. I am Sona Tumanyan. Join us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. Get your portion of information from our official website, Recipient.media. A breakthrough in the Middle East this hour. A ceasefire between Israel and Iran has officially taken effect, and the man credited with brokering the deal is the 47th U.S. President Donald Trump. At first, he wrote, "Congratulations, world, it's time for peace." In a short but powerful message on X, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has declared an end to the country's military actions. He wrote simply that operations concluded at 4 a.m. In the morning, Trump was generous in his words, and now the architect of this truce, Donald Trump, is taking a victory lap, releasing the specific mechanics of the deal he says he brokered. In an extraordinary statement, the president has declared what he calls a full and final agreement between Israel and Iran. He is not just announcing a deal, he is providing the world with a minute-by-minute playbook for how the peace will unfold. According to Trump, the clock starts in about 6 hours, allowing both sides to wrap up their final ongoing operations. He specifies that Iran will make the first move, halting hostilities. Israel is then expected to follow 12 hours after that. The final, he claims, will come at the 24-hour mark with an official declaration marking the end of the 12-day war. This public high-stakes declaration puts the timeline out in the open, placing immense pressure on both Tehran and Jerusalem to adhere to the terms as laid out by the U.S. president. Approximately 2 hours later, he added, "The ceasefire is now in effect. Please do not violate it." After weeks of escalating tensions that brought the region to the brink of wide war, there is now a glimmer of hope. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced he has accepted the ceasefire terms proposed by Trump, declaring that Israel's military plans have been successfully concluded. By the way, in the wake of the recent Iranian strikes, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also visited some of the hottest hit neighborhoods to speak directly with residents. The move is being seen as a symbolic gesture, one that appears to announce that this chapter of the conflict is over. Let's take a look at the footage.
And I came with the goal to strengthen your hand for doing this entire move, this entire operation. And moreover, the house of the parents, they came out on their feet from all this rubble. And tomorrow, they're coming to destroy our house, a house we grew up in. This is something that cannot be described. I truly thank you.
And I'm here with the goal of strengthening your hand
I thank you for everything.
for doing this whole thing, this whole operation, and moreover my parents' house, from which they came out on their feet from all this rubble, that tomorrow they're coming to demolish this house, the house we grew up in. It's something indescribable. It will be beautiful. I truly thank you. I thank you for everything. We will help you with everything. We are making a tremendous effort, and I will help you personally, but not just you. First of all, to help with everything possible, a generous hand, and most importantly, as you said, to cut through the bureaucracy, a quick hand so that we can help build here for glory. But I want to tell you more than that. I see our city leaders, I see our residents, our citizens.
Work that was done as a team.
Truly for the glory of the State of Israel, for the glory of the State of Israel and for the glory of the nations. The honor of the mayor is on the side.
But as the guns fall silent, critical questions are emerging. Was the threat of American military action the deciding factor that was missing to de-escalate the crisis? And the peace is far from guaranteed. In a pointed conversation with Russia's defense minister, Iranian General Aziz Nazirzadeh vowed relocation, stating that Tehran is determined to punish by all means those responsible for attacks on its soil. A fragile truce with the entire world watching and waiting.
There will be a complete ceasefire between Israel and Iran, which upon completing 24 hours should become the end of the 12-day war. The U.S. president, who has been the most active X user since last night, asks not to violate the ceasefire. I hope there will be no more hatred. I want to thank Iran for warning us in advance so that there would be no casualties or injuries. It is possible that Iran can now move towards peace, and I will eagerly encourage Israel to do the same. Trump thanks Iran for warning in advance that it would strike the U.S. military base in Qatar. By the way, it is interesting that the number of missiles launched by Iran corresponds to the number of bombs the U.S. dropped on Iran. Washington reacted cautiously. The base in Qatar has been evacuated. While Trump praises his ceasefire deal, there are reports of new strikes by Iran and Israel. Iran struck a multi-story building in Beersheba. The number of casualties and injured is constantly being updated. Foreign Minister Arakchi wrote that military operations to punish Israel's aggression continued until the last minute, 4 o'clock in the morning. However, if Israel ceases its illegal aggression against the people of Iran no later than 4 o'clock Tehran time, we have no intention of continuing our response after that. The commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, General Mohammad Pakpour, stated that Iran will deliver a more crushing response to the U.S. if Washington attacks Iran again. We warn the foolish American president that if he repeats his aggression against Iran, he will receive a more crushing and painful response that will be a lesson for history. After Iran's strikes yesterday, at least 26 flights heading to Dubai and Doha landed at other airports. And today, Bahrain and Kuwait opened their airspace. Early this morning, it also became known that Israel has opened its airspace for flights.
But the ink is barely dry on that ceasefire agreement, and already the optimistic silence has been shattered. In a move that challenges the very foundation of the new truce, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has just released a defiant statement taking to X. He painted Iran not as an instigator but as a nation on the defensive. He declared, Iran has not shown aggression towards anyone, and we will not allow anyone to show aggression under any circumstances. This is a stark reminder from Tehran that a pause is fighting does not mean a change in ideology. It's a clear message that while Iran may have agreed to lay down its arms for now, it reserves the right to respond forcefully, framing any future action as a defense of the Iranian nation. The question tonight, how long can this fragile peace possibly last under the weight of such rhetoric? Just as the world digests the defiant words from Iran's Ayatollah, the other shoe drops in Jerusalem. In a statement that is no less intriguing and arguably far more audacious, the Israeli government has laid out its version of events. This isn't just a claim of victory, it's a declaration of new strategic reality. But the core of the message is a claim of historic proportions. Israel now asserts that it has eliminated the immediate dual existential threat in the nuclear sector and in the field of ballistic missiles. This is a bombshell announcement suggesting the scope of Israel's operations went far beyond what was publicly known. To cement this new status quo, the statement ends with an ironclad threat, emphasizing that any breach of this new peace will be met with maximum determination. An alarm out of Israel. The Israeli Ministry of Defense is reporting that Iran has launched missiles. Let me repeat that just hours after both Iran and Israel separately announced their readiness to establish a ceasefire, Israel is now claiming that truce has been violated. However, we're getting a swift denial from Tehran. Iran is refuting any reports that it has launched missiles from its territory since the ceasefire was declared. That denial is coming directly from Iran's side broadcasting company. We're in a rapidly developing situation where one side is alleging its major attack and the other is calling it disinformation. A new forceful statement from Iran. The council asserted that Tehran had successfully deterred its adversary. We have made the enemy regret, accept defeat, and unilaterally cease its aggression, the statement read. Our armed forces are prepared to deliver a decisive and painful response to any aggressive action by the enemy. Furthermore, the Council clarified that Iran's armed forces will remain on a state of high alert, emphasizing that the country's leadership places no trust in statements made by the enemy. The declaration from Tehran marks a significant rhetorical escalation as tensions in the region remain high following an unprecedented series of direct strikes between the two rivals. Even as if the USA reaffirms its brotherly relations with Israel, the administration now says it wants to open a direct channel of communication with Tehran. In an interview on Fox News, Vice President J.D. Vance announced a push for direct talks, a stark departure from the decades-long reliance on back channels and intermediaries. We would like to talk to them, Vance stated, making it clear this was a directive from the president. We would like to have a direct conversation about how to move forward. Let us watch a segment from the interview.
Do you know for sure where all the highly enriched uranium is?
Well, Brett, I think that's actually not the question before us. The question before us is, can Iran enrich the uranium to a weapons-grade level, and can they convert that fuel to a nuclear weapon? And we know, based on the success of our mission, of course, the leadership of the president, but the incredible skill of our military, that the two mission objectives are completely successful. We know that they cannot build a nuclear weapon. Now, you asked about the highly enriched uranium.
Yeah, like 900 pounds of it.
But what we know, Brett, is that uranium is something that exists in very large supply. Our goal was to bury the uranium, and I do think the uranium is buried, but our goal was to eliminate the enrichment and eliminate their ability to convert that enriched fuel into a nuclear weapon. I think this is an important point, Brett, because so many of the folks who have focused on the highly enriched uranium,
sure, 60%.
The main focus, Brett, has been to destroy their enrichment capacity, because we don't want that 60% uranium to become 90% uranium. That's the real concern, and that's what was so successful about our mission.
A powerful and skeptical voice is coming from Moscow, reminding the world that the situation remains deeply uncertain. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov today poured cold water on any premature celebrations, effectively warning that the full picture of the Israel-Iran ceasefire is not yet clear. While he offered the standard diplomatic line that Russia welcomes any agreement for peace, his core message was one of profound caution. Let's listen to him.
As for the announcements, which today from 1 in the morning followed one after another like an avalanche from Washington, Israel, and Tehran, in my opinion, it is now very difficult to make any final conclusion and get a clear picture. This is because President Trump announced that it's over. Now there is eternal peace. There is an agreement. It is reported that the Americans have convinced Israel to agree to a ceasefire and establish an indefinite truce, and that a similar role with respect to Tehran was played by our Qatari friends. We will only welcome it if such an agreement exists. However, after its announcement, there were reports of strikes, of an exchange of strikes between Israel and Iran. Therefore, let's not make hasty conclusions now based on fragmented information, but we are for peace.
And now a major diplomatic development in the wake of the ceasefire. The head of the UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, is speaking out. In a new statement, IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi says he welcomes the recent announcements regarding the situation in Iran. He's emphasizing that a path to a diplomatic solution is possible. I welcome the statements on the situation in Iran. The resumption of cooperating with the IAEA is the key to a successful agreement. Grossi adds that he has taken a proactive step, stating, "I have written to Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, emphasizing that this step could lead to a diplomatic solution to the long-standing dispute over the nuclear program, and I have proposed a meeting." This is a significant move as the international community now looks for verification of Israel's claims and a path forward on the nuclear issue. And beyond the missile alerts and ceasefire declarations, the devastating human cost of this 12-day war is now coming into focus, with stories of personal tragedy certain to be remembered for a long time. We have a harrowing report from Iran's Tasnim news agency, which states that an Iranian nuclear scientist and his entire family were killed during an Israeli attack on Tehran. According to the report, the scientist Sayed Mustafa Sadati Armaki was killed alongside his parents, his wife, his two daughters aged 15 and 8, and his 5-year-old son. A story that underscores the price paid by civilians caught in the crossfire. An Iranian health official reports 44 Iranian women have been killed and 163 others wounded since the beginning of Israeli attacks, detailing the harrowing human cost of the conflict. Hossein Karmanpour, a spokesperson for Iran's Ministry of Health, stated that the deaths include 2 pregnant women who died along with their unborn children. He added that 13 children have also been killed, the youngest of whom was just 2 months old. According to the spokesperson, the youngest wounded child is a 4-year-old who is currently in an intensive care unit with burns covering 50% of their body. Whether this is the end of the war is still an open question, but for the first time in days, the sky no longer has borders or limitations. We're witnessing the first practical dividends of peace, and it's happening in the air. A rush to reopen airspace is sweeping the region. Early this morning, the crucial announcement came from Israel. Its airspace is now open. This is a direct and immediate consequence of a ceasefire, a move that signals a significant de-escalation. And they are not alone. Regular flights have already resumed overnight in neighboring countries. And just moments ago, both Bahrain and Kuwait followed suit, reopening their own airspace. For global travel and for the people of the region, this is the most concrete sign yet that, for now at least, the immediate threat has passed and the path to normalcy is clearing. But does a ceasefire in one part of the world simply mean the global focus shifts to the relentless violence in another? All signs tonight point to yes. With the guns falling silent between Israel and Iran, the war in Ukraine has rolled back into the headlines with tragic force. The brutality was on full display in the Sumy region, where a Russian drone attack turned a village into a scene of devastation. Authorities there say 3 people are dead, one of them a child. 3 more children are among the 6 wounded. It's a grim picture of the human cost of this war, a conflict that has never paused. But this was a night of two-way fire. The war is coming home for Russians as well. The Kremlin's defense ministry reports downing 20 Ukrainian drones. In a terrifying incident outside Moscow, the downing of 1 drone sent debris crashing into an apartment building, igniting a fire on the 17th floor. Among the injured, a pregnant woman. 100 residents forced to flee their homes in the middle of the night. As a stark and brutal reminder, while one fire in the Middle East may be dampened, another rages on, with civilians on both sides paying the ultimate price. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made a high-stake visit to London, holding meetings at the very highest levels of the British state. And a powerful symbol of the United Kingdom's unwavering support for Ukraine, Zelensky was granted an audience with King Charles III at Buckingham Palace. But the substantive work happened in talks with Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Following those negotiations, President Zelensky made a major announcement. Ukraine and the United Kingdom have agreed on the joint production of long-range drones and hunter-killer drones. He also added that Kyiv has received further support from London to strengthen Ukraine's critical air defense systems. And at the end, in the Caucasus, Azerbaijan is creating a false agenda to reshape the post-conflict narrative. The latest move came during a meeting of the Council of Ministers of the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation in Istanbul, where a document was adopted that provocatively refers to the Sovereign Republic of Armenia as Western Azerbaijan. The resolution calls on Armenia to ensure the return of Azerbaijan to its territory. This development comes just months after the forced exodus of over 100,000 ethnic Armenians from the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Azerbaijan is now employing a mirroring strategy, creating a false and symmetrical narrative to deflect from international scrutiny over the ethnic cleansing of Armenians in Artsakh. Monica Hayran discussed the topic with the experts.
We don't want to deepen the dividing lines in the region. On the contrary, we want to establish stability and lasting peace in the region. And in this context, I also consider our dialogue with Turkey to be very important. For example, one thing I consider important is to have the opportunity to personally share with the President of Turkey our approaches regarding the further course of the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace treaty and the peace agenda.
One day after Prime Minister Pashinyan's visit aimed at normalizing Armenia-Azerbaijan and Armenia-Turkey relations from July 21 to 22, the 51st session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation was held in the same place. Some of the provisions of the adopted Istanbul Declaration referred to Armenia-Azerbaijan relations. In particular, Armenia is called upon to overcome the legal and political obstacles hindering the signing of the peace treaty. There is a reference to the so-called Western Azerbaijan community, mentioning the right of return for Azerbaijanis allegedly forcibly displaced from the territory of Armenia, without a single word about the Armenians who fled the massacres organized in Baku and other cities, and those forcibly displaced from Artsakh. The organization once again condemned the alleged destruction of Islamic cultural heritage in Armenia with a baseless point, without arguments or evidence.
This is connected with the real Armenia-Turkey, Armenia directly with Azerbaijan, which is, let's say, a little inappropriate, because even without that declaration, they exist in the relations between Armenia-Turkey and Armenia-Azerbaijan.
According to Turkologist Andranik Ispirian, the issues mentioned in the declaration are not new, and their emphasis does not change the real course of Armenia-Turkey or Armenia-Azerbaijan relations.
Turkey will not normalize relations with Armenia without Azerbaijan, and naturally any Azerbaijani demand is also Turkey's demand.
Azerbaijan expert Angela Elibagova disagrees with the opinion that the declaration of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation is a document without consequences. According to her, the resolutions can have a negative impact on at least 3 levels, especially if Armenia does not take steps to neutralize their content.
It will have a propaganda effect. First, within the circle of Islamic states, Azerbaijan will be able to increase its political influence, to increase anti-Armenian sentiments. At the political level, these states will show more pro-Azerbaijani manifestations, including in their relations with Armenia. And of course, it can create problems at the religious level by presenting Armenia as an anti-Islamic state.
In a statement issued on Monday, the Armenian Foreign Ministry expressed deep disappointment with the distorted and extremely one-sided formulations found in the Istanbul Declaration and the resolutions presented by Azerbaijan. The ministry emphasized that there is no and cannot be a so-called Western Azerbaijan on the territory of the Republic of Armenia. It is noted that the Azerbaijanis living in Soviet Armenia left Armenia voluntarily, were able to sell or exchange their property, or received compensation from the Armenian government. Unfortunately, the fate of Armenians in Azerbaijan, in Baku, Sumgait, and other places where massacres and forced displacement of Armenians took place, has not been the same. And the world witnessed the latest manifestation of the same pattern in our region in the autumn of 2023, when more than 115,000 Armenians were forced to leave Nagorno-Karabakh, subjected to ethnic cleansing. The adopted resolution on the protection of cultural values is also a source of deep regret, as it ignores the continuous destruction of Armenian cultural heritage under the control of Azerbaijan and the systemic vandalism against it. The resolution attempts to give the issue a religious connotation, feeding misleading and dangerous theses. Armenia's respect and care for Islamic cultural heritage is well known and easily provable. The agency called on the countries that joined the declaration and resolutions to review and decisively reject biased initiatives that target Armenia's territorial integrity and sovereignty and endanger the normalization process between Armenia and Azerbaijan. By the way, next year the summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation will be held in Azerbaijan. Monica Hyroyan, Gevork Sianosyan, Reopen Media.
For more updates, follow us on YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, X, and Facebook. Daily news and full coverage are available on our official website, Recipient.media. I am Sona Tumanyan. Stay informed with RENEWS.